All right, so let's talk about the lesson we have coming up that I'm going to observe. So I know you've done pre-conferences before, but I just want to clarify the purpose of this pre-conference is for me to just really look at your planning process and what you've thought about when preparing the lesson in terms of things like your pacing and preparing for students who have different learning styles and all of those things. And all of that would include like how have you used data and things like that.
Sure.
So do you have any questions before we start? Okay. So first, I'm just going to have you tell me about the lesson, like the structure and the pacing, and what's your ultimate goal for students in this lesson?
So this is our first lesson of the new 6 weeks, and we want to go over some of the unit assessment data.
Okay.
Specifically, starting off with the most missed 2 questions, and going over. One of them was regarding transition words. Or effective word choice. One of them was a multiple choice question, and we will go over both. And then the majority of the lesson will be spent doing stations to create pre-learning.
Okay.
So they'll have an anticipation guide on quizzes. They'll be reading an article from the Washington Post and annotating it. They will be conducting a little mini research project about the origin of their name. So essentially getting some hooks in their brain so that they are able to build knowledge upon this basis. So we're building the foundation.
Okay. So that I feel kind of oriented in your unit. What comes next? What are we preparing for?
So we will be starting our novel Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds after this class. And because this book deals with some more mature themes, because there are issues that are discussed that some students might find resembling some of their own life, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the cycle of violence and masculinity and gang involvement. And I think that it's important, to recognize that that topic does already interest students, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're giving them as much background information as possible so that their understanding isn't limited while we're reading, so that they've already done some pre-reading and pre-learning activities before we start.
And then, so talk to me about, I know that you and your team don't necessarily read the same novel or do the same thing. So how is this lesson kind of aligned horizontally with the team?
So because we as a team have not done a poetic or poetry unit or drama unit yet, this is taking the place of, this is the poetry and drama text that we'll be using, because the whole book is told in verse. And I'll be having students read pages aloud, that we're doing random read alouds. They have the wheel at the front of the screen. And so they're practicing reading aloud, which is also great for telepaths. And they are practicing poetic devices and a lot of the poetic structures that we have not really had a lot of exposure to this year. So I think the other English 1 teachers during this unit are spending time doing maybe a play or a series of poems. I just chose to do Long Way Down because I think it's so wonderful.
So do you have a learning objective written for this lesson?
I do.
Will you share it with me?
Students will be able to analyze informational, argumentative, and nonfiction texts by recognizing connections between the author's purpose and use of language.
Okay, and so that is not necessarily part of the poetry standards, but you said that you're going to have some articles and research and things like that. Okay, so I'm understanding where you are. Okay, thank you. So you already told me about the assessment data that you used to inform your instruction. And did you say, I just want clarity, that you're going to share that and go over that unit assessment with the students?
We're going over the 2 most missed questions from the unit assessment. Not the whole thing, but that will be our bell ringer, is going over the most missed ones.
So you've targeted the most missed ones, and they will know this is the most missed on the assessment, and this is our goal for,
Yes, and our exit ticket will be a poll everywhere multiple choice question using the transition words, which was by far the most missed So we'll go over it at the beginning of class, do our stations, and at the end of class, they'll have an opportunity to try again.
Okay, beautiful. Because that was going to be my next question. So you're going to use that to collect data on those, the assessment data reteach or the assessment reteach. And then all the stuff you're doing in the middle, the stations, how will you know that your students are learning in those stations?
So there is an accountability like worksheet that they'll carry with them.
Okay.
So the questions are STAR or TEKS aligned. They all come from Lead Forward IQ. And the questions are, why does the author choose to write about this topic? Mm-hmm. Choose one piece of evidence. We have multi-part questions. We have a question about inferencing, as well as just some questions to make sure that they're engaged and that they're all doing the work that they need to be doing. So that's how they'll be assessed on.
Yeah. Okay. I really appreciate, I'm seeing alignment with the warm up and the exit ticket. And then I'm seeing alignment with the stations and the assessment that's going on, so that's great. So when students are filling out this accountability page, how will you kind of monitor student engagement and students getting sort of the correct answers? Are they on track? Are they off track in terms of what they're answering? And then also, are they even engaged? So how do you monitor that?
Do you mean during the lesson?
Yes.
Okay.
Like while they're in the stations.
So I am actively monitoring and aggressively monitoring during the exit ticket, but actively monitoring during the stations. Okay. I have the kids grouped by both like achievement on testing and just in our grading and independence. So my students, my groups that are needing the most support or scaffolding, I will be with to do some of the more difficult stations, like the reading aloud of the Washington Post article, which is taking the place of a text-to-speech option. So I'll read it with them so that there's definitely more engagement there since I'm with them. The students that are more independent, I'm going to be circling around as well as Coach Kitchens. But for the most part, we have a culture in our classroom of just, if I'm asking you to do something, we have 10 minutes to do it and it's going to be graded. Come on, gotta get it done.
Tell me how you kind of established or created that culture.
So certainly I tell them when something's going to be graded. And I think also just building relationships. We have respect agreements in my classroom that we did at the beginning of the year. We revisit them frequently. I try to make a mention of them almost every day. We read Long Way Down and we read Thank You, Ma'am. And I say, just like respect is on our respect agreement, it's in the story. So I think just building those relationships with students and trying to choose engaging texts like Long Way Down makes them realize that I'm not trying to make them do something that they really don't want to do. I'm trying to make them do something that is going to be good for them and is going to be interesting.
Awesome. And you keep answering some of the other questions that I was going to. No, it's beautiful. I love it because it shows that you're being extremely thoughtful in all the different, areas of what we're looking at for planning and T-tests. Okay, so talk to me about when you're doing. You said you'll be monitoring what students are doing. You'll do aggressive monitoring of the exit ticket. When you're doing that and you notice that a student is struggling, how do you determine what the cause of that struggle is? And then how do you kind of address their needs?
So because I do have an inclusion teacher in there, I have the numbers here. 9 out of 22 of my students are special education and 10 out of my 22 are EBs. Okay. So I do sort of keep an eye on those students specifically, and a lot of them are the same, right? That's not, that doesn't necessarily mean there's 19 out of 22. That might be that there's 12. But so I think I monitor those students and I keep a little bit of a closer eye on them. And so, of course, we break down vocabulary. I have sentence stems. But other than that, I think just actively monitoring that area, sitting them with people in the same kind of achievement group as them so that they are all more comfortable, like failing or productive struggling with each other because they're kind of all in the same boat. Okay. So when I notice some lack of engagement, I know that we might be needing to scaffold. It might be a vocabulary issue, or a lot of times it's honestly a technology issue because they'll say, wait, I don't know. How did I scan the QR code? So,
okay. So I'm hearing that you've put a lot of things in place to try to preempt their, like,
for sure.
their any issues they might come across, and then also for them to be comfortable struggling with things and maybe failing on something. And so that's great. And then you have SIMS and other resources for the kiddos that need them. Okay, sounds good. Okay, talk to me in your stations or in your warm up or your exit ticket. Where are you planning for opportunities to have those higher order thinking moments?
Definitely. So as far as higher order thinking, we are using really rigorous questions for all of the accountability paper and for the exit ticket and warm up. On top of that, I also keep a really urgent pace, which just keeps students not only more engaged, but also creates a little bit of, I don't know, it's a more fast-paced environment, I think can promote less thinking about your productive struggle. And so you're more likely to say, I think this is the answer.
Right.
Within that, my highest achieving and my most independent groups, I am circling and asking follow-up questions with them. We also had a warm-up where they were asked to go and look at other students' exemplars from the assessment, like on their short answers. And I asked questions about what does this need? What changes does it need? What grammatical errors are you seeing? And asked them to leave a comment on that. So I think asking them to observe within other people and then recognizing how that can improve their own writing is part of the higher order thinking, and then just asking rigorous questions.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. And then, so for the lesson that you have planned, do you anticipate any particular components of it being particularly challenging?
I do imagine that the Washington Post article will be the most challenging because it is 2 pages. It's a front and back paper. There's some vocabulary in there that I've bolded or highlighted in some other way because I know that they won't know it. And I've also revised the article itself to try and limit those instances so that they aren't just feeling really unconfident while they're reading.
Okay.
So I do imagine that will be a little bit more of a struggle, which is why I'm trying to prioritize being with my groups that need help during that station.
Awesome. And so you haven't removed all the challenging vocabulary. You want them to still struggle with it some and have to look words up or think through the etymology of the word, but you don't want it to be the whole reading experience. Right. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I'm with you.
Especially because they only have 10 minutes.
Right.
I don't want it to be a situation where I'm like, okay, check the dictionary for every single word you don't know.
Right. Totally understand. Okay. So when it comes to like your classroom environment, and I've been in there a lot, and I go in there sometimes just to hang out because if I need to pick me up, because I love your classroom environment. But tell me what you think your students would say about the environment in your classroom.
I think that they would say that it looks a little bit more like an elementary school classroom than some of their other classrooms. I have a lot of bright colors and pictures and posters. And I think that they would say that it feels like an environment. I did that intentionally. I think having a more elementary school environment can build confidence. Like, oh, I recognize the space that we're in. I think that I remember this not feeling that hard, especially for freshmen when they're just coming into high school. I think that they would say that they feel comfortable and safe with me, talking to me about some issues, but only after class, because if they try and talk to me about it during class, I'll say, save it. So I hope that that's what they would say, and that the environment is challenging, but not intimidating.
Okay. Is there anything you're working on right now to kind of refine your practices that you would want me to look for and say, like, Bohannon, I'm really hoping for you to look at this and give me feedback on this specific thing?
Yes. So I we've been reading Bambrick,
Mm-hmm.
the Get Better Faster book,
Mm-hmm.
and going through the scope and sequence, I feel like I am operating on a lot of the different levels and tiers kind of all at once. So I'm trying to go back and start from the foundations, and improve some of that so that I can look at the next step and the next. The things that I'm noticing might need some more attention are economy of language.
Okay.
I definitely have a tendency to ramble. A formal register and narrating the positive.
Okay.
So a lot of times I'll find myself, in a behaviorally challenging class saying, "Hey, guys, get it together."
Yeah.
But I want to be better about saying, "Oh, look, Angel's doing exactly what I wanted him to do," or "Look, Layla's doing such a good job. She's she's ready, she's waiting," and again, that can feel a little bit elementary at sometimes, but I also think that like I said, try and create an environment where I want to please the kids and they want to please me. And so if I'm saying, "Look how good this person's doing," I'm hoping that will make them say, "Wait, I want her to say that about me." So those are definitely the parts that I feel like I would like some more attention to, because I think that they're needing a little bit more. Oh, and in introducing or including an exemplar.
Okay. So economy of language, formal register, narrating the positive, and using an exemplar. Love those. Okay. Let me see. So I would normally ask about differentiation, but while you were telling me about all of the things, I didn't hear the word differentiation, but I heard so many ways you're going to differentiate for your students. So I'm not going to harp on that right now.
I also have all the learning steps.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Okay, so first of all, kinesthetic, we have the gallery walk, so getting up, moving around the room, using sticky notes to post their ideas. We have a poetic devices matching, that's one of the stations. So they'll be taking like different examples and putting them on top of a sheet protector that has the different kinds of poetic devices. We're not using all of them, but we're using the most common.
Okay.
And then for the Washington Post article, I have used the highlighting, the bolded words, and it makes mention of the reading the mind and the eyes test, which I printed off so that they could look at it while they read.
Oh, cool.
The quizzes is just a survey anticipation guide, but it does have pictures, and it is just using the I'm forgetting what it's called, not audio, not visual, not kinesthetic, like the written.
Oh.
And then, of course, their accountability paper is writing short responses.
Okay.
And then as far as audio goes, specifically at the beginning of class when we're going over the unit assessment data, when we're introducing the stations, and when I'm reading the article.
For my reading, yeah, I was thinking about that one too. Okay. Is there, first of all, I'm really excited to see this lesson. So thank you for sharing all of the thinking and planning that you've done in preparation. I'm so excited. Is there anything else you want me to know before I come in and observe?
So I do give my students a brain break as part of our relationship agreement and just our classroom culture. The expectation is that students are not on phones, barring an absolute emergency, and they are not on AirPods. They are not going to the restroom, because all of those things can be disruptive to the flow of my classroom. So usually midway through class, I would give them a brain break. In this case, to minimize like breaking up the flow of work, we have one station, which is the quizzes survey, that takes much less time. And so I'm having them take their brain break during that station. So they'll have 10 minutes. It usually takes about 5 minutes to do the quizzes. They'll have 5 minutes to go use the restroom, be on their phones, do whatever they need to do before we return and go to the next station. I do that very intentionally. I monitor who is, if anyone is ever late, then you lose your privilege the next class if you are not back in your seat by the time the timer is ended. But you probably will see some students on those stations, only on that station, using their phones, getting up and leaving. And so just so that you know in the moment, they are not just leaving my classroom. They have permission. That's just part of our relationship agreement.
Yep. Love that. And it's already part of your structure, and you made it so that it doesn't interrupt instructional time because it's that extra minutes in the station. Sounds good. I don't have any questions about that. Anything else you want me to know? Anything about just that class period? Anything like cultural about that class period?
I have 3 SPED students who really struggle, some of them behaviorally, some of them academically,
Okay.
that have a pretty difficult time. And so I do think that that's something I want you to know ahead of time. And I've also had a student in that classroom who I've had some behavior issues with specifically. He just does not like my class, does not care for me, as he has made clear. And so we've had conversations. I've talked to the band director that he's in that class with. But just going in, sometimes that is a challenge, trying to get that student specifically to engage without provoking a fight or like a power battle, which I'm not trying to do, or a power struggle. I'm not trying to do that.
I hear you. And I can observe like your interactions with that student, maybe give you some feedback too if you want. Okay. Very cool. I don't have any more questions. I think for a teacher as early in your career as you are, you're always very impressive when it comes to all the different dimensions of all of the things that you're trying to manage as a teacher in a classroom in 2024.
Thank you.
And so, like I said, I'm excited to see that lesson. Thank you. All righty.